Well, guess I'm a Neptuber now. So, it seems like you guys really liked my two videos going over Neptune's character. And I mean really liked them. To be honest, I wasn't expecting either of them to blow up. In fact, I was expecting them to be relatively obscure to the fanbase at large. But look how that turned out. So, before we start, I just want to say, very briefly, thank you. Your support really does mean a lot to me. Now then, on to the video at hand. A little while ago, I made a community post regarding what I planned to do next for a video. I said that even though a lot of you wanted to see more character analyses, doing that would be kind of a nightmare for me, honestly. Hell, it took me 2 or so weeks just to finish the script for my Neptune video, and that was just the first draft that I later amended into the final script seen in the 2 videos. And potentially having to do that for more characters? It'd be awful, honestly. So, I proposed that I would do a challenge run of Megadimension Neptunia V2 as an alternative, which seemed to be something that a few of you actually wanted. So, I came up with one. Let's call it the BROKEdimension Neptunia Challenge. So, what exactly is the BROKEdimension Neptunia Challenge, you ask? Basically, I have to play through the entirety of Megadimension Neptunia V2 and beat the game from start to finish, with a twist. During the playthrough, I can only make purchases from the shop every so often, usually after defeating a notable antagonist within the overall story and game. This means that, until I defeat any of those notable antagonists, I'll have to rely on the treasures found in the dungeons and get lucky with drops from enemies that have a chance to drop a consumable item or two when defeated. I figured that I could do something not too challenging, but not too easy either, as it requires a combination of luck and knowledge of the game's mechanics to see success, which I find to be a fun mixture of elements. If I go too long without defeating a notable antagonist though, say in the second arc where the stories vary in their roster, then I'll allow myself to make one shop visit to get what I think I'll need. But when I do that, I can't visit the shop again until I defeat an antagonist. This challenge run will be split into 3 notable segments, each of them getting their own video. The first video, the one you're watching right now, will focus on the Zero Dimension arc, combining the 2 halves of the arc into one video. The second video will focus on the Hyperdimension arc, which will be a combination of all 4 stories as well as the final stretch with a showdown against Affy Mojas. And, lastly, the third video will focus on the Heart Dimension arc. However, I should note that I did not do both of the selectable routes at the halfway point. I only did one route, as I felt it would have been too monotonous of a task to do both routes. I also want to mention that I deliberately did not go for the revival ending in this run. Instead, I simply settled on the Ascension ending for the same reason as me not doing the other route in Arc 3. So, if you were expecting me to go through the revival ending, I'm sorry to say, but that's not going to be featured in this run. One final thing I want to talk about before we get into the run itself is the other rules. During my initial test run of this challenge, I came up with a set of rules that would help make things a little more interesting, as well as prevent me from being able to breeze through the later parts of the game. But to not spend too much more time on the intro, I'll simplify them for your viewing pleasure. Rule number 1, I can't overlevel my party members past the highest leveled enemy in the current story progressive dungeon. You're spared this time, Big Metal Dogu. This rule takes inspiration from a rule found in Pokemon Nuzlocke challenges, where you can't level up your Pokemon past the level of the next gym. For example, in the first visit to the Jingu Sakura Park, I can't level my party members past level 15, as that is the highest level for any enemy in the dungeon, that being Dark Purple, the boss of the dungeon. Rule number 2, I'm not allowed to return to a previously completed dungeon unless I am required to by the story, whether that be because of an event, or because there is a mandatory quest that I need to complete there. This is to prevent me from getting extremely easy surpluses of XP and credits. And, rule number 3, the following mechanics I'm about to list on screen are prohibited. The reason I'm doing this? Simply put, the use of all of these features would bog down the challenge considerably. They all provide huge benefits with very little consequence for me as a player. They can be easily abused, and it would simply make for a less fun, exciting, and entertaining challenge. Besides, you're here to watch me suffer in the name of the Neps, so what better way to accentuate that than by disabling all optional content, baby? Oh, and I don't think I really need to mention this, but no DLC either. This means that everything from the Issy's beginner set to the crossover characters are banned, as they're way too overpowered for me to even consider allowing. And that should be it for the explanation of the challenge. So, with the rules and end goal established, let's go ahead and take a look at my challenge run in Megadimension Neptunia V2, the BROKEdimension Neptunia Challenge. Will my penny pinching restriction be what prevents me from being able to win? Or will I scrape right by, tightly clutching my precious gold for hours on end and hoping to spend it when I can? Let's find out right now. The first hurdle we face is this Argodeus, serving as the tutorial boss for this game. I mean, what else is there really to say about this guy? Its stats are pretty pathetic since it's just a tutorial boss, meaning all we need to do is a couple of combos and it's easily defeated. In turn, we are given a life fragment as a drop. Life fragments are the revive items of this game, and in this case, it allows me to revive a defeated party member with 30% of their HP recovered. Now, 30% might not sound like a lot, but really, all I'm interested in is keeping a party member alive so I can clear fights more easily. And believe me when I say, I'm gonna need to keep him alive. Moving on, I snatch a couple of items from the treasures in the dungeon, namely a few healing grass, which lets me restore 800 HP to one of my party members, as well as grind some enemies to bring myself to level 7 before I encounter the next boss. Or, well, really, it's just a pack of enemies, but the boss life meter does appear in the top left for one of them specifically, but it's not even much of a boss, it's just 3 of the same enemy. But regardless, these guys are piss easy. 3 SP attacks is enough to take them down individually. With all those enemies defeated, we now get access to the world map. This is also going to be our introduction to a city tile, a yellow circle on the world map which will restore my HP and SP when I pass it. These are going to be extremely helpful for me, as my limited number of healing items would be burned through super fast if I just used those instead of coming back to these. But there exists another agonizing problem within these city tiles. I just want to buy something, but I can't. Yeah. Anyways, after skipping a couple of cutscenes, which I am doing, yes, sorry viewers, our next fight is against the Serpentis boss. It's also an incredibly easy boss, just a couple of SP attacks and it's dead. But after that, we face yet another boss. Back-to-back encounters, whoa! The Mega Slaymon. Compared to the Serpentis before it, this guy can actually pose a bit of a threat. With a larger health pool, as well as higher stats in general, this thing is going to take quite a bit to defeat. Also in this fight, we're introduced to 2 new mechanics, the HDD form, and the formation attacks. The HDD form, as you might expect, is a transformation that provides boosts to your stats through the use of a processor unit. I'll talk about those more in depth when we get into Arc 2, but all you need to know right now is that these provide 10 to a specific stat depending on the part. And to talk about the other mechanic, formation attacks, these are powerful attacks that can only be activated under 2 conditions. 1, all of your party members involved in the formation attack are using the same level of transformation. And 2, you must surround the enemy in the specified formation as seen in the attack's information. There are 3 different formations, a pinch formation, a triangle formation, and a square formation. However, this fight is a pretty bad introduction to them because Uzume is in her HDD form, whilst Neptune and Nepgear are not, meaning you can't even use the formation attack unless you disable Uzume's HDD form. Regardless of that though, a couple of SP attacks and a Tri-Burst is enough to take down Mega Slaymon pretty easily. After skipping a multitude of cutscenes, we return to the Nameless ruins, kill a couple of monsters, and eventually get access to the Coral Station dungeon. Here, I can snag a couple more items to use along the way, and fight some new faces, though they're still not too big of a threat. Once I reach the end of the dungeon, I'm faced with the first of 2 fights. The first fight is against the Unikeldos. This fight, much like the fight with Mega Slaymon beforehand, gives us an introduction to a new mechanic, and one that is completely new to V2, the parts break mechanic. Throughout your adventure, there will occasionally be an enemy that has something like an appendage or an object on or around its body. With the new parts break mechanic, we're able to attack both the enemy and the part that it comes with. In this case, we have to destroy the Unikeldos' wings to attack it for the full damage. Otherwise, the damage it takes is going to be significantly reduced, and make the fight longer and harder as a result. A Tri-Burst does the job, and after the wings are destroyed, this little horsey is no more than a fodder enemy in boss's clothing. Once we defeat the Unikeldos though, we're faced with another boss fight against Giga Slaymon. I guess it evolved from the previous fight or something? Like a Pokemon? Either way, this is basically the exact same fight as the first go around, except both its and our stats are higher, although it's a bit trickier this time since my SP has been used up quite a bit due to having to deal with the unit Keldus' wings. But, once again, a couple of SP attacks and tri-bursts, as well as some final combo attacks, are enough to take this doggy down. With this, I still can't access the shop. Fuck! Well, at least I'm still able to get through these dungeons relatively easily, even with my current default gear and limited resources. Moving on to the next dungeon, we have the Jingu Sakura Park. The dungeon itself isn't exactly anything too exciting, some fights here and there, some treasures for me to collect, all that. But the real star of the show is the boss, Dark Purple. This fight represents the first huge step into V2's bosses, literally and figuratively. Dark Purple introduces yet another new mechanic, and technically an entirely new combat type, the giant battles. These fights work quite a bit differently from regular battles as a couple of changes have been made. Firstly, you can't use any of your combo moves. Period. Since your basic attacks are disabled for the duration of the fight, you have to rely on SP attacks, EXE drives, and formation attacks to claim victory. However, not all attacks are created equal, as there are specific SP attacks and EXE drives that you can't use for these fights. For example, Nepgear's Mirage Dance attack can't be used in this fight, while her other SP attack, and PBL, can. Secondly, your SP is constantly being regenerated every turn, by specifically 60. This means that you can use your SP attacks and whatnot without the worry of running out of SP as fast as you would outside of these giant battles. And third, there are different islands for you to hop onto and walk around on, allowing you to set up your formation attacks. Considering our enemy is, well, fucking enormous, it's recommended that you separate your party members and put them on different islands to not only set up these formations, but also to prevent multiple of them from being hit by the massive area of effect that the Dark Goddesses have on their attacks. Each of their attacks cover an entire island, meaning that if you have multiple or all of your party members on one island, they're gonna get hit. Hard. Now then, on to the fight itself. Dark Purple is one of the first fights that will likely give newer or inexperienced players a genuine challenge. With monstrous stats, higher than any enemy that we've come across so far, it's certainly going to be no easy task to take it down. This is especially concerning, as just 3 attacks would be able to defeat any one of my party members if I don't heal or defend. So going into this fight, I had a strategy in mind. Since Nepgear and Uzume are both characters that have healing techniques, both of which cost less than what is being regenerated every turn, as long as Dark Purple sets its sights on either one of them, I can continuously use their healing abilities on themselves to act as a tank, while the other two, especially Neptune, focus on damage. This way, I'm able to continuously chip away at Dark Purple's health, while I have one party member withstand all of the damage and stay alive the entire time. However, there is one problem with this strategy. Dark Purple, if you don't know, has 2 attacks that will affect every character on the field, regardless of their position. Namely, Flower Bloom of Chaos, where Dark Purple flies into the air and crashes down, causing, I guess, some sort of shockwave attack that damages all party members, and Brilliance of the End, its strongest move that's essentially a spirit bomb that deals insane damage and will easily one-shot my party members if I'm not defending against it. If either one of those moves gets used, especially Brilliance of the End, then I'm in big trouble, as that means I'll have to either burn some of my items or I'll just game over outright. And unfortunately, that's exactly what happened to me here when I attempted Dark Purple for the first time. I was doing the strategy as usual, until it used Flower Bloom of Chaos twice in a row. The first one defeated Neptune, and left both Nepgear and Uzume at very low health. And the second one just killed Nepgear and Uzume outright. My first game over of the run. Case of some pretty bad luck, I'd say. Going into the fight for a second time, my strategy remained exactly the same. Split up the group, have Dark Purple target one of the 2 healers, and focus on damage with the other 2. And thankfully, luck was on my side for the second fight, as Dark Purple kept its focus on Uzume the entire time, and didn't use a single all-hitting attack, meaning both Neptune and Nepgear stayed alive the entire fight. With a bunch of SP attacks, Dark Purple is defeated, and with it, our first major roadblock of the run. I was actually a bit underleveled for this fight as well. I went into this fight at level 12, which works, but if the first attempt is anything to go by, one small case of bad luck can send everything downhill. Now, with Dark Purple defeated, I can finally get my hands on some items from the shop, and there's a lot of stuff for me to purchase. First, I grab a steel bracelet. The only reason I'm doing so is to craft the power bracelet at the earliest time I possibly can. This will be very helpful, not only because it gets it out of the way for the required use of it in Arc 2, but also because I can start destroying these aptly named destructible objects in the coming dungeons, which can sometimes contain items, but mostly contain small amounts of credits and materials. But even small amounts like this can really add up over time, making it useful all around. Next, this one's a no-brainer. I immediately stock up on a lot of healing grass. These things are basically my lifeline in the dungeons, as they heal a little more than Nepgear or Uzume's healing abilities can for the time being, which will allow me to conserve SP for boss fights later on. Lastly, I buy new weapons for Nepgear and Uzume. The latter, in particular, benefits greatly from this, as it allows for the most efficient combo route currently available to me at this point in the game. The only reason I didn't buy one for Neptune was because I can obtain a free weapon for her in the ZECA Club dungeon, which is the next dungeon we are going to be visiting. Once again, nothing really special here in this dungeon. The boss isn't anything too special either. Even if it has higher stats than Dark Purple, it's still a piece of cake comparatively. It has a cannon on its right shoulder, which you can destroy if you're attacking it from the front or using a formation attack, but I'm not even sure if it does anything if you destroy it. So I guess it's just there because reasons? Either way, this thing is weak to the lightning element, meaning you can use Tri-Burst to inflict some pretty big damage to it. With that boss defeated, it's now time to start the halfway point of this arc. Or, I would say that, but first we have to face a bunch of fodders. Kind of like our second boss at the beginning of this arc. But, just like those guys, they're still fodders, meaning they can be taken down with simple combos. I don't know why the developers felt the need to put this here, but sure. Regardless, we've now actually entered the halfway point of this arc. Nepgear and Uzume leave our party, meaning we can only use Neptune at the moment. Also, remember that free weapon I said I could get for Neptune? I fucking forgot about it. Meaning, at this point, I'm stuck with the wooden sword that I've had since the beginning of the game. But hey, at least we finally get to see the Dogus in this game. Oh man, it's only been 45 minutes since I last saw you guys, but it is really refreshing to see our favorite monster mascot back in the limelight. Back to the gameplay at hand, our next destination on Boss Avenue is the Ancient Dragon, everyone's favorite. This guy is actually a pretty challenging fight if you don't know what you're doing. He has some pretty high stats, higher than even Dark Purple's. On top of this, since you're fighting as solo Neptune, getting KO'd means you're getting a game over. No party member to help revive you. I didn't have much of a strategy going into this fight, as brute forcing him into submission seems to be the only thing you really can do aside from healing every other turn or so. But this guy has a trick up his sleeve. An evil trick. A very devious and frankly annoying trick. This move is called Dragon Raid. It's the Ancient Dragon's strongest attack, and you can think of it as an EXE drive, but slapped on a boss instead. Here's my main gripe with this move. If he uses it, I die. It does way too much damage for me to live through normally, and because I have so few healing items, I basically have to try and whittle his health down to critical before he can use that on me. But it seems that luck has betrayed me this time, as I was killed when he could act twice in one cycle. Thankfully, I was able to defeat him the second time around, but it did force me to burn through quite a lot of my healing grass just to get by. Ugh, I sure hope that doesn't come back to bite me in the ass when I need to eventually heal myself in a fight. Anyways, now that the Ancient Dragon has been defeated, we return to Nepgear and Uzume in the Zero Dimension, where our next dungeon is the Datoyna Cave. No, not Daytona. Datoyna. I know, I made the same mistake at first too. This dungeon, in contrast to the previous one we just went through with Neptune, is extremely dangerous. Despite there only being 3 individual enemies in this dungeon, all of them deal high damage and are very tanky. Getting into a fight with one of them, especially the metal nagas and the crossboxes, will more than likely get me killed. Thus, I settled on the Fenrir's for a little bit of grinding. This will just barely let me get to level 16, which is pretty underleveled for this upcoming fight, but like I said when I was explaining the rules, I can't just go back to a previous dungeon to grind. I gotta stick with the current one. This one single level does matter though. Stats are stats, and I need every little increase I can get. Now, moving on to the boss of this dungeon, the first one actually, we have Arfoire in her, I guess, human form? Something like that. Either way, let me tell you, out of all the bosses that I've fought up to this point, and even afterwards, this was the fight that I struggled on the most. With stats higher than even the ancient dragon that we just fought, and with only 2 members in our party as opposed to 3, Arfoire is going to be the biggest challenge we'd faced thus far. The strategy that I had in mind was simple, and pretty similar to the strategy for Dark Purple. Have Arfoire hard focus one of the two, which I mainly wanted to be Uzume, while the other focuses on dealing damage to Arfoire, with an occasional SP attack from the tank here and there. Unfortunately for me, this version of Arfoire remembers all of the shit that happened to the other version of Arfoire that Nepgear killed, and so she decided it was high time to bully Nepgear for what she did in Mark II. And generally speaking, when one of them died, so did the other. This happened a lot, and it caused me to spend more time in this dungeon than basically the entirety of the challenge up to this point. That's how much I was struggling. But, with a little bit of luck on my side, I was able to do it. Yes! No! Yes! 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 Oh my god. Fuck that. I beat Arfoire in the first fight. Damn it! Well, at least now I have an extra party member with Big Nep on my side. I just gotta be careful. If I lose this fight, I have to do the first one all over again. Wait, that was it? That was the entire second fight? All I did was spam my SP attacks! How was the first fight harder than the second fight? Ugh. I guess I can relax a little bit, knowing that since I defeated Arfoire, whom is a notable antagonist, I'm finally able to go shopping once more. First things first, buy the maximum amount of healing grass that I can. No questions asked. Second, buy a couple of armors. Third, roll out and move on to the next dungeon after skipping a lot of cutscenes. Fourth, get random encounters along the way and question life. On a serious note, the last new dungeon for us to visit in Arc 1 is the Smashbox Stadium. You know the drill by now. New location, new enemies, more treasures. This time, I actually remembered to pick up the free weapon sitting in here for Big Neptune, and promptly equip it to give me more of an edge in our upcoming fight. Our pleasant boss for this dungeon is once again Arfoire, this time in her true deity of sin form. The stats are actually somewhat similar to her 2 previous forms, meaning it should be relatively easy to take her down, right? After all, it was incredibly easy to beat her, even when she had higher stats in her deity of sin form in the fight beforehand. Okay, well, I didn't take as long to beat her this time at least. The real main issue I was having with this fight was the ticking time bomb that is Arfoire's strongest attack, Finale Guide. It's basically her EXE drive which she uses after a certain health threshold, kind of like Dragon Raid before it. If Arfoire uses this move, and I'm not guarding for when it happens, it's basically a game over. The move just does absolutely insane damage, and getting hit by it will take out a majority of my health. So I essentially have to anticipate when she's going to use it, which is completely random, or I have to try to defeat her before she ends up using it, which is also random and up to luck. During my first attempt, I spent a few turns defending trying to anticipate her using it. When the bomb went off, only Uzume and Nepgear remained alive. I was hoping that, due to the extra turns I was given because of Arfoire using this attack, I would be able to defeat her with a couple of SP attacks. But unfortunately, I didn't do enough damage, which led to her using Finale Guide again and getting me a game over. And just to add insult to injury, she landed a critical hit on Uzume as well. Bitch. On the second attempt, I was put in basically the same situation, but even worse. Nepgear was defeated this time, and only Uzume and Big Nep remained, but both were on extremely low health. This time, I attempted to heal myself in the event she didn't use Finale Guide 2 times in a row. But, as it is with my luck, she did, and I got my second game over on this fight. But, on the third try, I simply brute forced her and defeated her before she had the chance to use it, just like I said was possible. Third time's the charm, as they say. After the fight is finished, Uzume is out of commission, leaving just Nepgear and Big Nep as the 2 party members available to me. As is required by the story, we have to revisit both the Jingu Sakura Park and the Nameless ruins in order to acquire ingredients for some medicine for Uzume. She got kinda fucked up in a cutscene that we skipped, so we have to get these 2 key items in order to progress the story, because plot. Anyways, the first revisit I decided to do was the Jingu Sakura Park. Technically speaking, you can visit either dungeon first and you'd be just fine, but the Jingu Sakura Park is prettier, so I wanted to go there first. Our boss this time around is the Kahul. Kahule, however you pronounce it, we have to beat this owl up in order to get the key item we need. Its stats are nothing to write home about, surprisingly, and considering that all I really did in this fight was spam my SP attacks, this thing's a piece of cake. After its defeat, I head into the Nameless ruins to collect my other key item from the boss here, La Ignis. I'm not even joking when I say that these fights are the exact same, because they are. These two have the same exact stats as each other, meaning their strategies are also the same. Spam SP attacks, and you're golden. To be honest, after the hurdle that was Arfoire not even 10 minutes ago in my playthrough, seeing these guys be so weak and easy to defeat is pretty disappointing. But enough about me complaining about strange enemy statistics. With both bosses defeated and Uzume restored to full strength, it's time for us to face against the final boss of this arc, Dark Purple Infused Arfoire. And just as a cherry on top, Little Nep joined our party once again to help us face off against her. With the highest stats in all of the Zero Dimension arc, it's surely not going to be an easy battle, right? Right? Well, because of the fact that we have 4 party members, as well as being much more powerful than our first encounter with Dark Purple, my strategy was the same as the fights that came before this. Spam my SP attacks and go for the kill. I didn't even have to use the original strategy against Dark Purple, where I have someone act as a tank. I literally just spammed my SP attacks and whoa! Fuck! Alright, so maybe I almost died during this fight, since I was a bit cocky and thought that I didn't need to heal. But regardless, the fight against Dark Purple Infused Arfoire is won, and that's the end of the Zero Dimension arc. So far, this challenge has been pretty fun to go through, and while I may have had a big hiccup with the first Arfoire fight, I pushed through. And now I'm moving on to the second arc, the Hyperdimension arc.